Today I am going to demonstrate the ribbed cast on. It's a variation of the alternating long tail cast on, which I use for my double knitting projects. This variation is for a single color and is a great way to get your ribbing started straight from the cast on. Because it's a variation of a long tail cast on, we need to figure out how long of a tail we need. To do that, I'm going to wrap my yarn around my needle 12 times. I'm going to treat it as if it were 10 stitches. So if my cast on number is 20, I would just measure the same length of yarn twice, and then I like to add another inch or so. We're going to set up for a standard long tail cast on. If you haven't done this before, you grab your center of the yarn where your long tail is, and you make a bird beak and insert through the loop. Grab it with your bottom two fingers and then open the bird beak. And that's your basic long tail setup. And then I don't like to start with a slip knot. However, if it makes you more comfortable, you could make a slip knot right at the center point. When you start for straight knitting, I like to cast on following my second row instructions. I'll be demonstrating a knit 2, purl 2 rib, ending with 2 extra stitches with the knit 2. Since I'm casting on my wrong side, I'll start with a purl stitch. And to do that, I'm going to come up between and grab my yarn, and then going around to the back of my index finger, I'm going to slide between into that hole, grab the yarn, and pull it through. And there's my first stitch, which is where I grab the yarn, and my second stitch is a purl stitch. Now I'm going to do 2 knit stitches, pulling back slightly, grabbing the outside of the thumb, going over the first index yarn and pulling it through, dropping the thumb out of the loop, and then pulling it tight again. You don't want to really tighten too much or your cast on will be too tight. Once again, outside thumb, up from underneath, grabbing the first index thread and pulling it back through the thumb loop, dropping the thumb, and then retightening. Now we're doing a purl stitch again. We're going to go to the outside of the index finger, jumping over the inside index finger, coming up from underneath the thumb and pulling it back through, dropping the index finger out and tightening. Again, outside index finger, over the inside index finger, grabbing the first yarn from the thumb and pulling it back through the loop and tightening. And you can see there's a definite difference between my purl stitches and my knit stitches. And I'm just going to continue that pattern for the number of stitches called for in my pattern. Here's a knit stitch, and the purl stitch. And another purl stitch. Let me see if I can get a different angle on this for you. So I'm grabbing my thumb, going up over top of my index finger yarn, and pulling it back through. And then my index finger, grabbing my thumb yarn and pulling it through. And I'm going to call that good. I end with 2 purl stitches. If I were knitting in the round, I would cast on my row 1 stitch pattern, because you'd never see the back side. Now I'll work a few rows in this knit 2, purl 2 rib, so you can see how the cast on looks once we get a little bit further away from it. Here you can see I've worked 4 rows of my knit 2, purl 2 pattern. You can see there's a really nice crisp start to my knit stitches. My purl stitches have bumps from the previous row. It looks identical front and back, and it's built the stretchiness of the rib into the cast on. I use this cast on for the majority of my mittens, gloves, socks, anything where I want a stretchy edge to the beginning. It makes a very nice start for any of your ribbing patterns.